Welcome to the Playing Books podcast. Today we are exploring a book that offers one of the most, I think, compelling yet simple invitations for personal change we've ever really come across.
That is a powerful one.
We're getting into the core promise of this book, the power of writing it down, a simple habit to unlock your brain and reimagine your life by Alison Fallon.
And that premise is, it's so accessible, which is why I think it's revolutionary.
Exactly. It's this idea that a simple habit, expressive writing, is the key to unlocking your brain, changing these really deeply ingrained patterns, and actually reimagining the life you thought you were stuck in.
It feels like the ultimate permission slip, to stop struggling and just start finding some clarity.
Yeah.
And that concept, unlocking your brain to reimagine your life, I mean, it resonates so deeply with decades of psychological work. It's all about intentional self-reflection.
So for this episode, we're going to be your guides through Alison Fallon's framework.
That's right. Our mission is to show you not just why so many of us feel this chronic sense of being stuck, but the hard science behind how putting a pen to paper can initiate real neurological and emotional change.
And most importantly, the practical steps, the how-tos.
The how-to, the concrete steps you need to implement this habit, maybe even today.
And this isn't just, self-help fluff. The credibility around this approach is immense.
Oh, absolutely.
This book comes highly recommended with strong endorsements from people like Miles Adcox, the CEO of OnSite, who says it's a perfect blend of grace and practicality.
And Hannah Brencher adds that it provides this powerful framework for recognizing that we all have a story to tell. It's a fundamental challenge to us to actually go for it.
Right.
Exactly. The author, Alison Fallon, has paired this deep empathy and emotional intelligence with really practical tools. And that makes this whole methodology valuable for people from all backgrounds, no matter what your job is or what your experience level is.
And she has the experience to back it up. As the founder of Find Your Voice, she spent a decade working with people.
Whether they want to publish a great novel or they just need a reliable way to get unstuck in their lives, she really comes across as that trusted, experienced guide for finding clarity and reclaiming your own agency.
So let's start with that root problem, the thing that makes us even reach for a book like this in the first place. Fallon calls the core cause of our stagnation the hang-up.
The hang-up. And what's interesting is that it's not some catastrophic failure or a big dramatic life crisis.
No, it's that silent, persistent, and frankly, often embarrassing sense of dread or boredom that just hangs around.
Even if, on paper, your life looks pretty good.
That's the key, even in a pretty good life.
And it's the cost we pay for holding back what's trying to be expressed. We silence our truest stories, our big kind of inconvenient ideas.
Even the visions we have of ourselves.
Yes. The visions of ourselves that are just begging for permission to exist in the real world.
And we do it to stay reasonable, to follow the rules, and most of all, to keep the peace with people around us.
But that cost, it's felt physically, isn't it? It's that looming sense of disconnection, that something inside you is not being fully honored.
Oh, I think we all recognize that feeling. And what do we do when that little suggestion from our gut surfaces?
We ignore it.
We totally ignore it. We tell ourselves that other people have worse problems, that we're being dramatic.
Or that you just need a better attitude. Maybe a gratitude list will fix it.
Right, or I just need to try harder at work. But the book points out that if we actually listen, the hang-up isn't just an annoyance, it's a message.
It's a message trying to get your attention. It's begging for words, begging for a voice.
And the refusal to listen to that inner voice, well, it forces us into these endless strategies for distraction.
Oh, yeah. The author is incredibly candid about the ways we do this. Turning on the TV for 8 hours, drinking a bit too much wine, mindlessly scrolling social media.
Or even relying on medication like Xanax or pot.
Anything to avoid sitting still and hearing that inner voice that might be suggesting something terrifying.
Like quitting a secure job.
Or setting a new, really difficult boundary in an old relationship. Or letting go of that comfortable stability that has defined you for years.
That explains so much about why external validation never really sticks. You can fill your life with things that look amazing on Instagram, the awards, the vacations, the perfect family photos.
But that attention and praise, it always lands in the wrong place.
Why?
Because it's fundamentally disconnected from your most valuable possession, your voice, your truth. You might be applauded for being a great parent, but those compliments don't silence the dread that is begging to be heard from your core.
Okay, so if this dissatisfaction is so intense, why is it so incredibly hard to make a meaningful change?
That's the million-dollar question. And this book powerfully argues that being stuck isn't a moral failing. It's not about a lack of willpower or discipline.
It's a brain thing.
It's a brain thing. It's a function of the brain's fundamental design. Your brain is designed for survival and efficiency, so it automates behavior to make life easier and save energy for real threats.
And this brings us to that core concept of neural pathways. This is so crucial for understanding why an act as simple as writing can actually work.
Alison Fallon explains it beautifully. When you take an action or even just think a thought like, that person is so annoying, a tiny messenger travels a path from one brain cell to another.
And the more times that path gets traveled, and we're talking hundreds, thousands, maybe even millions of times,
The more well-worn and deeply carved it becomes a superhighway in your brain.
that's the automation process at work. It's why you can still remember your childhood best friend's old phone number.
Or why you might find yourself driving toward the house you lived in 10 years ago without even thinking about it.
I've done that. It's so weird.
It's your brain mastering a behavior. It's evolutionarily brilliant. You don't need to waste precious mental energy thinking about how to tie your shoes every single morning.
But from the perspective of someone trying to grow past old habits, that automated system is the enemy.
It's the ultimate enemy. You're fighting against neural pathways that were carved a long, long time ago. So when you try to change your path, say, choosing kindness instead of your usual anger, that little neurological messenger basically says, no thanks, I know the efficient way to go, and it's this rut right here.
So if our brains are so hardwired for this kind of efficiency, how realistic is it to think that, 20 minutes of writing can compete with decades of that conditioning? That feels a bit optimistic.
That is exactly the right critical question to ask, and the book addresses it by emphasizing the disproportionate power of intentional focus.
Ah, okay.
Writing requires intense focus and attention. Those are the exact ingredients you need to trigger neuroplasticity,
Yeah.
the brain's ability to change.
So when you intentionally write a new narrative, even if it's a messy one, you're forcing that messenger to take a new unused path.
Exactly. That's why writing is the essential tool here. It's the key that unlocks the mystery of your brain, allowing you to purposefully jump out of those old ruts and quite literally carve new neural pathways when the old ones no longer serve you.
So through consistent, focused writing, you're teaching your brain how to break these deeply ingrained behaviors by just giving it new directions.
That's the theory and the practice.
I really appreciate that the book immediately pushes back on this idea that writing is some elite activity reserved for, the gifted or the published author.
Right. This is about being literary.
No, it's about communication, self-discovery, creativity. It's a distinctly human impulse. It doesn't matter if you're John, the BMW mechanic with a secret screenplay, or Aaron, the Lyft driver who kept journals under his mattress.
And the research supporting this is actually really compelling. The author shares some surprising stats that just underscore this. Writing about your deepest thoughts and feelings for as little as 20 minutes a day for just 4 days in a row can measurably improve your mood and your overall health.
4 days. That's a tiny investment for what could be massive quantifiable returns.
A huge return.
20 minutes might seem like a lot if your schedule is packed, but if you think about the potential leverage there, what if those 20 minutes made everything else in your day easier?
Easier to manage your anxiety, easier to articulate a boundary to your partner.
Easier to say no to that thing you were dreading. That emotional efficiency is the real win.
And to connect literacy back to genuine, tangible power, the book references some powerful studies from places like the Annie E. Casey Foundation.
Right. They highlight this devastating correlation between low third-grade reading levels and social outcomes.
It's stark. Students not reading at grade level by the end of third grade are 4 times more likely not to graduate high school. And those non-graduates face significantly higher rates of incarceration.
So the point isn't to draw this direct line from, writing in a diary to escaping poverty.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's to understand that written words fundamentally build what Fallon calls mental constructs.
Okay, what does that mean?
These are our abilities to organize thoughts, to articulate complex ideas, to reason logically. These constructs help us lift ourselves out of our circumstances, no matter how dire they are. They allow us to see life from a new, more powerful perspective.
So writing gives you the ability to persuade, to reason, and to make a way where there wasn't one before. That accessibility makes it a universal power.
I was really struck by the biological metaphor used in the book, this concept of metabolizing life.
Me too.
It suggests that writing offers this powerful, necessary way to ingest our experiences, break them down, absorb the nutritious parts, the lessons, the wisdom, and then discard what doesn't serve our growth.
It's like a digestive system for your inner world.
It is.
So can we drill down on what it looks like when we fail to metabolize? What happens when those experiences turn to poison?
When we fail to process them, that energy that was meant for flourishing, it becomes toxic. It manifests as repressed anger, sadness, persistent hostility, even physical discomfort.
The energy doesn't just disappear.
It gets trapped. It's the difference between eating a healthy meal and allowing unprocessed food to just sit and rot in your gut. Writing forces that digestive process and prevents the inner toxicity.
And this leads right into the fascinating research on vocabulary and emotional regulation.
Yeah, this part is amazing. The book shares findings that word choice is so much more critical than we realize. If a person uses the same limited phrase, say, "that sucks," to describe two wildly different circumstances.
Like, my close friend died and my pizza has olives on it.
Right. The brain's ability to categorize and appropriately regulate the emotions around those two experiences is as limited as their vocabulary.
So to the brain, the pizza problem is measured as a tragedy equal to losing a friend because the emotional descriptor is identical.
That's what the research suggests. When we don't have a rich vocabulary to reflect the true nuance of our experience, our brains literally struggle to differentiate between the two events in terms of emotional weight and urgency.
Wow. Think about that implication. If your only tool for emotional expression is a sledgehammer, everything looks like a nail.
Whether it's a minor inconvenience or a genuine trauma.
Writing is the process that forces us to find what Mark Twain called the exact right words.
And finding that precision is the difference between writing about a lightning bug and writing about lightning. Articulating our confusion or our losses with the exact right words allows us to gain clarity, to feel more settled, and critically, to leave that stress and pain safely on the page instead of carrying it around in our bodies.
And we have to acknowledge the fear that stops us. The story of Aaron, the Lyft driver, who stopped writing because his mother found his journals and read them aloud to his friends.
It's so cruel.
It's heartbreaking. That fear of criticism, of being misunderstood, it prevents so many of us from engaging in this profoundly human instinct to write. We reject the identity of writer, but secretly, we're all just dreaming of finding a way to be seen and heard, even if that audience is only ourselves.
So if expressive writing is the transformative tool, the next, and I would argue most difficult step, is the implementation.
Making space for it.
Yes, making space for it, which Alison Fallon calls the sacred act of making space. And this is crucial because creative energy doesn't just show up magically. It flows where space is intentionally made for it.
That goes against our intuition, doesn't it? We think, once I figure out my brilliant idea, then I'll make time for it.
Right, but she emphasizes the opposite. Without first establishing the space, the clarity won't come. Writing requires our full focus, our full attention, and the modern world is actively designed to deny us that essential, quiet, uninterrupted space.
So Fallon identifies 3 types of space we need to carve out: physical, calendar, and mental. Let's start with physical space.
We don't all need to be like Mary Oliver writing prolifically because she didn't own a cell phone and spend all her time in the woods.
Right. We can't all run off to the woods and give up our devices, but the principle still stands. We need to create a physical space that lets us truly let our guard down.
In that physical space, it doesn't need to be some idealized image of a writer at a sun-drenched typewriter.
No, writing gets done in the real world. In airplanes, quiet coffee shops, your work break room.
Or even, as the author suggests, tucked into your bedroom closet where the kids won't look for you. It just needs to be a simple, quiet, familiar place where you can feel comfortable enough to release your internal performance mechanism and just tell the truth.
The book shares that great anecdote about the author's temporary apartment during her divorce.
Right.
It was decorated with these hard, clean lines, a lot of sterile white, gray, and blue.
Which, as she later realized, perfectly reflected her anxiety and grief.
And her friend, Lindsley, who knows about things like feng shui, pointed out this simple, powerful truth. Our physical space is a reflection of our mental and emotional space.
Yeah, she asked her how she had decorated her heart.
Which is such a great question. And by making these simple, intentional changes, adding woven blankets, introducing warm colors, she brought in warmth and softness.
And she started sleeping better. Her anxiety diminished
Yeah.
before she wrote a single word.
It just shows that deep connection. Making physical space is often the very first step in carving new neural pathways and creating new mental space for yourself.
It connects right back to Virginia Woolf's idea of a room of one's own. It's symbolic. It's about having mental and emotional sovereignty space to think, to dream, to create.
So if you find yourself thinking, I don't have anywhere in my house to write, that lack of physical space might be reflecting a deeper lack of mental and emotional space that you need to address first.
That brings us to calendar space.
Ugh. In our culture, busy is a badge of honor. But carrying that badge, it really represents a profound lack of self-prioritization.
We think being busy makes us valuable, but it often just means we're letting everyone else's priorities dictate our time.
So the author proposes this difficult allegiance exercise.
Yeah.
Physically lift your time commitments and ask why you are doing them.
And you have to move past the surface level. It's not just, I go to work to make money. It's identifying the underlying allegiance. I work 60 hours a week because I'm desperate for my boss's approval.
Or, I volunteer every weekend because I'm afraid of disappointing my friends.
Right. When Fallon did this, she realized her entire calendar was built around gaining other people's approval. She was trading her own happiness for the external validation of friends, family, even Instagram followers.
And writing it down is so critical. Thinking and writing are connected, but they aren't the same. The physical act of writing it out just opens up new insights that thinking alone can't access.
Time is our most limited and valuable resource. And by listing your time commitments and their underlying allegiances, you reveal what your true religion is, as defined by your calendar.
The practical solution is simple, though. Schedule your writing time, maybe 5 to 20 minutes a day, and treat it like a non-negotiable appointment.
Like a doctor's appointment or lunch with a friend, you wouldn't skip those things for a minor reason, so don't skip your writing time.
The recommendation for when to schedule it is interesting, too. Early morning or late at night.
Yeah, the research suggests our brain naturally slows down at night and stays in that slower state until we wake up. Mother Nature is kind of helping you access that less guarded, more limbic part of your brain at those times.
So then the third type of space is mental space. And this is the counterintuitive but vital first writing step.
You sit in your designated space at your scheduled time with zero expectation that you'll write anything. Just look at the blank page.
The goal is just presence. Simple, but so difficult.
It is. The moment you sit down and try to be present, you immediately see how cluttered and chaotic your inner world is.
Grocery lists, worries about coworkers, buzzing phones, reminders about dry cleaning. It's impossibly loud.
So to write, you have to take a deep breath, notice all those thoughts, prioritize just one thread, and intentionally tune out the rest.
And this practice is about accessing the thoughts buried beneath the surface, right? The ones with the greatest leverage for change.
Exactly. Even if you don't write a single word on day one, just sitting there allows you to see the landscape of your interior world. You're getting present with yourself to see the actual blueprint of your current mental state.
Speaking of interior worlds, let's talk about resistance. Chapter 4 gets into the drama of the blank page.
Yeah. She shares this powerful story about her first teaching job when she was 25. 2 teenage boys started fighting in her classroom, and she just froze.
And she screamed for security, waiting for the grown-ups to arrive.
The irony being she was the grown-up.
And that's the metaphor, isn't it? We surrender agency in our own lives. We wait for someone else, a parent, a therapist, a guru, to tell us what to do next, instead of trusting our own inner wisdom.
And writing instantly hands you back the keys. It reminds you, you're the CEO. You're the grown-up in charge of your own life story.
But taking charge is terrifying. Creating something out of nothing, that tension, that fear, that's the drama of the blank page.
The author recalls her own early writing life. Not the idealized image, but sitting there, unshowered, eating cold oatmeal, bribing herself with Girl Scout cookies just to finish a paragraph.
That's real.
The blank page is a metaphor for putting your 2 feet firmly into your own life, rather than tiptoeing around the edges. When you commit to creating something where there was nothing, you are guaranteed to go backward before you go forward.
And writing teaches us to show up to that blank page, even if the words that come out are messy or backward, because they are still forward progress.
Now, the book distinguishes between 2 kinds of drama that surface when we sit down to write.
Okay.
The first is outside drama, the stuff that happens to us. The author recounts a week where her sister had a heart attack, a tornado hit her old neighborhood, and the coronavirus started threatening everything.
So the key insight here is that writing doesn't cause the outside drama.
No, but the act of focusing on writing reveals how incredibly distracted we've been all along. We're constantly bombarded by news, social media, notifications. Our world is not built for attentiveness.
And we get to control our response to it. When outside drama hits, do you walk away to take productive action? Or do you panic, letting the old fear pathways take over, and spend 3 hours watching disaster footage? Writing helps you decide which is which.
The other type is inside drama. This is the inner drama queen.
The 3 a.m. texts from your own brain saying, everything is falling apart, you're a fraud.
Yes, and unlike outside drama, inside drama is undeniably stirred up when you commit to the blank page.
That is precisely why you suddenly feel an overwhelming urge to clean the refrigerator or organize your sock drawer instead of writing.
It's an avoidance mechanism. The author compares it to a necessary emotional earthquake. If you've been repressing anger or grief for years, the drama might be intense when you finally give it a voice on the page.
But these emotional earthquakes are vital for discharging that trapped energy. They provide a catharsis that can prevent a future uncontrolled outburst.
And the beauty is, you have your hand on the volume dial. You can turn it up to 10 for rapid, deep processing, ideally with a therapist or strong support.
Or you can keep the volume at 2. Write for 10 minutes, notice a little bit of drama, and release it gradually over time.
The ultimate lesson is that the drama demands your attention. It's not just about completing a task, it's about who you're becoming in the process.
Okay, let's pivot to the practical mechanics of transformation. According to the book, this always starts with questions.
Right. Great writing and a great life is born from great questions, not just easy answers. We write about what confuses us, what eludes us, what inspires us.
The questions our life is asking us are almost always the questions we need to ask in our writing.
Exactly. Think about her client Cindy, who spent a decade researching the 1963 Birmingham church bombing. The historical event wasn't personal to her, but the questions it raised were universal and gripping.
Who will remember those our culture wants to forget? Or who protects the weak and vulnerable?
Those driving universal questions kept her going for years.
And questions literally hook our brains into a loop, like a merry-go-round we can't get off until it's answered.
It's a survival mechanism. Where is food? How do I stay safe? And once those are met, the questions deepen. What am I here for? Is there more to life than this?
And this loop-seeking behavior applies directly to our problems. We can stay stuck in a toxic relationship by asking, how can I make him love me? That's a limiting question.
It is. But writing reveals the questions we're already asking, the ones hidden beneath our daily thoughts. And it gives us the chance to ask better, more expansive ones.
We see this pattern everywhere. Harry Potter hooks us with, can an ordinary boy overcome darkness? The 5 Love Languages asks, how do I improve my relationship?
Even reality TV like The Bachelor asks, is the fairy tale of instant perfect love real?
So when you're writing or your life feels stagnant, the problem might just be a lack of compelling, unanswered questions. Start with questions and everything gets more interesting.
But the efficacy of writing isn't just about putting any words on paper. It's about the kind of words you write.
Right, which brings us to the foundational research into expressive writing, pioneered by people like James Pennebaker.
His studies showed staggering, undeniable results about the physical and emotional healing effects of writing.
Let's look at that 1994 job loss study. It involved 63 middle-aged men who were laid off from the tech industry.
They were divided into 2 groups. The expressive writing group was asked to write about their deepest thoughts and emotions, about the job loss, the trauma, the anger, the fear.
And the control group just wrote about trivial topics, like time management at their old jobs.
8 months later, the results were astounding. 52% of the emotional writing group had found new jobs,
compared to only 20% of the other group.
Think about that difference. More than half of the men who wrote about their suffering were reemployed.
That's a nearly 30% difference in employment, even though both groups went to the same number of interviews and had similar skills.
That is a crucial data point. What it implies is that expressive writing was actually more effective than traditional job-seeking skills for these men. The hypothesis is that writing allowed the men to discharge their pent-up anger and shame before the interview. They closed the emotional loops, which allowed them to present their best selves rather than unconsciously projecting their anger onto potential interviewers.
So it's about emotional closure.
Measurable emotional closure. And this expressive writing model is based directly on cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, which underpins modern talk therapy.
So writing, in this context, is like the cheapest form of therapy because it lets you map this internal chain reaction for yourself.
To explain why this works on a physical level, the book brings in modern neuroscience from people like Dr. Joe Dispenza. He details how every single thought you have fires a neuron and sends a cocktail of chemicals to your body.
So every thought is a chemistry experiment. If the thought is angry or fearful, you're flooded with adrenaline or cortisol.
And that creates a memorized feeling in the body. The biggest mistake we make when trying to change is focusing only on the outcomes. The real work is changing the automated, memorized thoughts and feelings that drive those outcomes.
You can't control being fired, but you can change the story you tell yourself about it.
Which brings us to the infinity prompt. This is Alison Fallon's framework for structuring this analysis. It ensures your writing covers the 5 components required for words to affect real change.
Okay, let's walk through these steps carefully because this is the key to application.
Step 1 is fact. This has to be a verifiable, indisputable, objective detail.
The book uses that great example of Amy, who came to a workshop and said the fact of her situation was, I'm fat.
But I am fat is not a fact. It's a thought and a feeling. When the author asked the room if anyone thought Amy was objectively fat, not a single hand went up.
So what was the real fact?
After some digging, they discovered the true, verifiable fact was Amy had recently gained 10 pounds. Facts have to be objective, free of emotional baggage.
Okay, so wait, let's clarify. If I'm feeling depressed, how do I know if that's a thought or a feeling?
That's where most people get stuck. The fact is what a camera could record. The thought is the sentence running in your head.
So for depression, the fact might be, I haven't left the house in 3 days.
Exactly. And the thought is the internal explanation, I am lazy and worthless. The feeling, step 3, is the physical manifestation, the lethargy, the deep sadness. You can challenge a thought, but you can't change a fact that already happened.
That makes sense. Okay, so step 2 is thought. This is the story we tell ourselves about the fact. For someone who's been single for 10 years, the thought might be, nobody wants me.
Right. And step 3 is feeling. The memorized sensation in your body, loneliness, shame, dread, that comes directly from that thought.
Step 4 is action. What you do to engage or, more often, disengage from that unpleasant feeling.
So to avoid the shame of nobody wants me, you might hide from social contact, drink too much, or overwork yourself.
And finally, step 5 is result, the logical outcome. If the action is to hide, the result is isolation, which takes you right back to the original fact being single.
You see the self-fulfilling prophecy laid out clearly on the page. Using the infinity prompt instantly becomes this powerful diagnostic tool to unwind those emotions, change your internal narrative, and reclaim agency over your outcomes.
Now we have to address the reality of resistance, which is inevitable. Chapter 7 deals with getting stuck.
Right. Fallon identifies a simple truth. Where you're stuck in writing, you are absolutely stuck in life.
The resistance to writing just mirrors the resistance to seeing what's actually there, the off-limits topics.
And this resistance is often an internal battle between 2 parts of the brain. First, there's the frontal cortex.
That's the part concerned with logic, efficiency, order, and the paralyzing fear of ridicule, the inner critic.
Oscar they actually, as she calls him, the voice that corrects your grammar and whispers, this is stupid.
And the other side is the limbic brain.
This is the core we need for expressive writing. It governs creativity, emotion, imagination, play, curiosity. It thrives on guessing. The frontal cortex is for survival, but the limbic brain is where the power for change and creative breakthroughs lies.
And you know the feeling when you're limbic, right? Losing track of time, seeing the movie in your head.
Or feeling physical sensations in your body, like chills or goosebumps when writing about a charged circumstance. When you're not limbic, you feel stuck in your head. You're thinking too much.
So the book gives practical tactics to re-engage the limbic system. The first one is to move your body.
Get outside, go for a walk, do jumping jacks. There's a brilliant quote from a celebrity fitness trainer in the book who said, people tell all their secrets when their heart rates are up.
Huh? Because it keeps you honest.
It bypasses that hypervigilant frontal cortex. We see this in the story about the writer's retreat in Kentucky. The writers went from being creatively stuck to having floods of words just because they gave up their smartphones, embraced unstructured time, and walked everywhere.
They consciously permitted themselves to be creative instead of efficient.
Another core mantra for maintaining the practice, especially when facing that inner critic, is write now, edit later.
Right. We need grace for the first draft, especially when the first draft of our life gets messy.
Like Jamie's story. She moves across the country for her husband, he immediately leaves her, and then she gets evicted. She was living the drama of the blank page, forced to start from a complete blank canvas.
And she realized she needed permission to be in the first messy, ugly draft of this new phase of her life.
And when that frontal cortex tries to jump in and edit immediately, telling you how stupid your thoughts are, the author offers a physiological fix. The long in, longer out breathing exercise.
Can you explain that?
It's simple. It's designed to physiologically slow your brain waves and drop you out of the critical frontal cortex and into the creative limbic system. If you inhale for 6 counts, you intentionally exhale for 7 counts.
In for 6, out for 7. Repeat.
Always have a little more exhale than inhale. It promotes grace over effort and allows you to access that deep, creative, unguarded state where real breakthroughs happen.
Let's shift now to the emotional necessity of safe disclosure. Chapter 11 is Write It Like a Love Letter.
And the foundational research here is incredibly clear. Secrets kill. Literally. Keeping secrets is physically exhausting. It leads to measurable loneliness, sadness, hostility, guilt, and impaired cognition.
The stats are wild. 90% of kids learn to lie by age 4, and the average adult keeps around 13 secrets.
And we are actively inhibiting our true thoughts and feelings. Our body is expending energy to keep that truth locked down.
So disclosure is the path to healing, but it can also be dangerous. You can't just tell an abusive partner you're planning to leave.
Exactly. So writing provides safe disclosure. It translates traumatic events into language without the danger of telling the wrong person at the wrong time. This is a private, sacred space. You never have to show your work.
And to unlock those deepest, most guarded words, the trick is to write it like a love letter.
Determine one imaginary or real recipient. A spouse, a loved one, a child, or even someone who represents a kind of aspirational wisdom.
And that instantly takes you off the stage of performing your societal roles, the perfect parent, the compliant spouse.
It moves you into a safe, private, one-on-one environment where you feel permitted to tell the truth.
Like the writer who thought she was bored with her husband and that the marriage was dying.
But when she wrote an imaginary letter to him, she confessed the deepest truth. She wasn't bored. She was terrified of losing him. And her disconnection was just a defense mechanism to protect herself from that anticipated pain.
So the act of directing the writing toward love actually changed the truth that emerged.
It focuses your energy, making the writing richer, more human. It fuels you, moving you in the direction of self-love and love for the world, rather than anger or bitterness.
Okay, as we look at the long-term impact of this practice, Chapter 9 focuses on becoming your own narrator.
I love this metaphor. It's like a hot air balloon. Writing lifts you above the trenches of the protagonist's immediate struggles and gives you that elevated narrator voice perspective.
So the narrator is the wise, all-knowing voice of reason who knows where the story's going. The protagonist is stuck in the emotional weeds, suffering and confused.
But the narrator knows who the main character is trying to become and why this suffering is necessary. You are both the suffering protagonist and the wise narrator.
And your actions matter most to how the story will unfold.
The narrator doesn't change the objective facts of the story. They frame them. They decide what the facts mean. The challenge, of course, is dealing with the false narrators, that inner committee of the critical professor, the angry protector, and all those external voices from parents or social media.
Your true narrator voice knows more about you than anyone else ever could. And that's why writing down a difficult question and free writing for 10 minutes often leads you to answer your own question.
That truest, deepest part of you is driving your life. You just need to tune out the noise to hear it.
And there's neuroscience behind this too. The process of naming an emotional experience, what researchers call affect labeling.
Moves us out of the emotional limbic center and into the logical, higher reasoning part of the brain. When we're highly stressed, we're what Pennebaker calls temporarily stupid. Our working memory is reduced. We can't think clearly.
But simply labeling the feeling, I am feeling deep shame right now, is enough to move that activity to the frontal cortex and give you back your executive function.
Writing is the portal to access that clarity and wisdom, so we can change what's within our control, our response, which ultimately changes our outcomes.
Now, Chapter 12 addresses one of the most powerful and often painful realizations, the ending that hasn't been written.
We have this completely normal yet unhelpful human tendency to finish the story before it's really finished.
Yeah.
We decide our career is ruined, our purpose is lost.
Our love life is irrevocably over.
Right. And Melody Miles' transformative story perfectly illustrates this necessary shift. She was working for the Gates Foundation trying to save the world when her personal life fell apart.
Her mother got sick, her husband left.
And her inner narrator voice gave her this crucial, difficult insight. You can't fix suffering in the world without feeling it yourself first.
So she shifted her goal from saving the souls of the world to saving her own soul.
And when she started outlining the story of her life, the final chapter was blank. Fallon told her the reason it was blank was because she was still living toward the resolution.
That realization led her to quit her job, travel, and consciously reshape her life, knowing she was the only one who could write the ending.
We often stand on the precipice of a hopeful resolution, right at that all is lost moment. The challenge is to stay in the story long enough to keep writing and to actively participate in shaping the ending, rather than prematurely declaring defeat.
The final chapters really synthesize the long-term impact, returning to that metaphor of writing as a digestive system for our experiences.
If we don't metabolize, what was meant for flourishing turns to poison. We saw that with Connie, who realized she was harming herself by repeatedly allowing her addicted friend to victimize her.
Her realization that she was hurting herself more than her friend was what was the breaking point that unhooked her.
And her letter to her friend saying, "I need space, I cannot put myself in the way of harm anymore," was the positive boundary-setting action born from the clarity she gained on the page. We all have that wisdom buried inside. Writing just makes it visible.
And the value of contribution is also so critical here. The story of Sarah, the wealthy client, who wanted to write to contribute something of value beyond money.
It proves that everyone, regardless of external success, has a piece of themselves to share. The beauty of the writing life is that it draws you back to the page to remind you that you have something vital to contribute.
Our words carry us back to ourselves and reaffirm our worth, like the postscript the author's friend wrote in a letter to herself. P.S. Don't forget you're beautiful.
And finally, we have to consider the question of legacy.
Fallon critiques influencer culture, where influence is wide but often shallow. True influence is transformative and deep.
The real question is, what is the lasting thing we leave behind? John Steinbeck wrote his letters to his editor, which became Journal of a Novel, specifically for his sons so they would know where they came from.
We're reminded, too, of Anne Frank's diary, written just because she felt like writing, which became a profound legacy read by 30 million people.
Or the author's own tiny entry found under a grocery list. "I never knew love could feel so much like hate." The words we capture, even in our most private moments, shape who we are and who we become. They're the most lasting thing we get to leave behind.
So, to summarize the power of this practice,
expressive writing is a practical tool, and it's rooted firmly in neuroscience and psychology. It lets you bypass those old automated neural pathways, confront your inner drama safely, access your inner narrator's wisdom, and fundamentally reclaim the protagonist's role in your own story.
you're not destined to just repeat the outcomes of your past.
And the clarity you gain isn't about magical thinking. It's about courageously cultivating awareness and contemplation. It's the courage to look thoughtfully at your pain, your fears, and your deepest desires for a long time.
So let this be your reflection point for today, something to mull over. Right now, what is your persistent hang-up?
What question is truly driving your life and consuming your attention?
And what uncomfortable truth about yourself are you currently avoiding by relying on distraction?
Pick up a pen. Find 5 minutes of quiet in your sacred space. Try the long in, longer out breathing exercise right now to drop into that creative limbic system. You might just surprise yourself with the profound clarity that comes from giving yourself permission to just write.
We strongly encourage you to connect with the author, Alison Fallon, on social media to continue engaging with these powerful, life-altering ideas.
And please purchase this book, The Power of Writing It Down. A Simple Habit to Unlock Your Brain and Reimagine Your Life by Alison Fallon to continue your journey toward clarity, agency, and truly writing your next chapter.
Thank you for joining us for this episode.
We invite you to follow, subscribe, and share the Plain Books podcast.